Okay, so again, good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and begin. So my name is Rich Tolosi. I'm a teacher here at Sunway University, working in the intensive English language program. And together with my colleague, Lei Hong, Ton, we put together the information for this particular workshop. Unfortunately, due to a family emergency, she's unable to join in the presentation part of this workshop, but I do want to extend my thanks and appreciation to her for the assistance and brainstorming and helping me to organize and put this information together for you this morning. Okay, so let's just continue. Is everybody able to see my screen? I hope so.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so the focus here is to really provide a very basic theoretical framework of the flipped classroom approach. We won't go into a lot of detail with that, but just basically review that. And we'll spend a considerable portion of time as well looking at a practical example of how we flip the lid, or I flipped the lid in a sense, using this particular approach for one aspect of a research project assignment in one of my classes. But before we get into that, I just want to conduct a short poll here, just to learn a little bit about who has joined this workshop, where you're from, and some of your experiences. So I'm just going to deploy this poll now. So give me just a moment to relaunch it. So if you can take a moment to answer the questions. Okay, so just looking at who we have here, we have a good balance of those who are teaching in a university or college setting, as well as those working in a government or a private school. So majority or over half of the people are currently teaching in a physical class in person or in a hybrid capacity. And as far as familiarity with the flipped classroom approach, okay, there's a good bit of familiarity out there. A few people unfamiliar, that's okay. Okay, so the one question I forgot to ask, and maybe you can put in the chat box, is where you're from. I'm just curious where people have come from who've joined this particular session. Okay, so definitely Malaysia. Anywhere else around the world, or is everyone Malaysia? Okay, so 3 of us are from Malaysia. Okay, good. Heda, Sarawak. Anyone from another country? Okay, so it looks like we're all from the same area here. Okay. Let's navigate to my next slide here. Okay, so what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear flipped classroom? You can take a few seconds to quickly write your idea in the chat box here. What comes to mind when you hear the word flipped classroom? Okay, between online learning, face-to-face, student focused, blended learning. Okay, good. Doing some research in advance before the class. Okay, students continue to learn and practice outside the classroom. Increase student engagement. Learner autonomy. Face-to-face and online. Using in and out of class time. Okay, good. To reverse. Okay. Student engagement in class. Yes, for sure. We'll talk about that more. Student watch videos before a lesson. Okay. Student went outside the class before coming to class. All right. Good. Good. Some good ideas there. Now, I'd like to define a couple of terms relating to this context. First of all, synchronous learning and asynchronous teaching. Synchronous has to do with where the teacher and the student are present in that particular lesson at the same time. There's the real-time interaction taking place there. And the setting could be in person, whether you're in a physical classroom, or it can be in an online session, whether it's through Zoom or MS Teams or some other learning platform. The asynchronous is where there are the assignments or activities given for the students to complete at home. It could be content that we posted online on a learning platform, course book materials, notes, or whatever that they do independently. The interaction that takes place is very minimal, and it's usually done through messaging, discussion boards, or forums, or emails, or some other means of communication while the student is working independently. So synchronous learning, it can happen whether it's the physical classroom or in an online setting. Now, when we think of a flipped classroom approach, instead of having students come to our class and attend a lecture or listen to our lesson, and then we send them home where they apply that knowledge with the homework, we move the actual lesson to the home environment before class, and then have students work on application of knowledge and extension activities inside the class. So traditionally, the students come to class, there would be some sort of a lecture or some sort of an input of information. We're basically using class time to feed the information to the students. They're more of a passive learner, just absorbing the materials, the things that we're saying, that we're sharing and teaching to them. And then we send them home to do their homework. Now, the expectation many times as an educator is that we expect the student to move from being a passive learner in class to being an active learner once they get home. And for many students, they can operate in that situation and switch gears and actively engage with the material. But for a lot of students, there's that lack of needed support that helps them to reach that active stage that doesn't always work with the traditional classroom learning experience. But with the flipped classroom, we focus on giving the bulk of input, the theory and things like that at the beginning before the student comes to the classroom. So they do this at home. It's more of a passive style of learning. Maybe we give them a video to watch. Maybe we assign reading materials or some other activities that will help provide the input or the foundation of what the content is that we want them to learn. They do that at home so that when they come into the classroom, then we, the educator, we're now present to guide the students in real-time active engagement. There's less time dealing with input of information and more time to focus on application. There we can see how well the students understand that material that was given to them during the input stage at home. We can provide additional support when necessary, and we can devote more time to applying that information to actual productive activities. And the benefit there then is we're guiding the student in the class now toward content mastery rather than providing more and more information. Now, when we think about a flipped classroom, we really need to think through what it is we're doing when we want to do a flipped classroom lesson. First of all, there's some prerequisites that we need to think about. First one is that it is purposeful. That we ourselves as a teacher, educator, we have a clear purpose in mind for this flipped classroom lesson. And we need to make sure that that purpose is clear to our students, that they understand what is that objective, what's the goal of this particular lesson. Also, we need to make sure that our lesson is well planned. It's not something we can do on the spur of the moment that morning saying, oh, today's going to be a flipped classroom session. Well, is it really a flipped classroom session if we follow through the stages that's important for putting this type of a lesson together? So it needs to be well planned, well thought through so that it flows and it's clear and it produces the results we want. And then the other thing we need to think about is to what extent it's possible. Is it something we can possibly achieve in a flipped classroom setting? Or is the content too complex? Is it too difficult? Is it something they won't be able to grasp in that situation? So we need to really critically think that through before we spend all the time and energy putting together that flipped classroom lesson. Okay, so just a bit about my experience. I first heard of the flipped classroom teaching way back when I was in Australia teaching there. But I, like many of us, were busy. To take on something new, we don't really have time. So I sort of put it on the back burner and didn't think much about it until I came to Malaysia and was teaching here in Malaysia. And then we were put into the situation because of COVID where we had to transition to blended learning and things like that. And so that's whenever I decided, okay, I'm going to now look at how I can implement that in my current course. And I found some key benefits there because it changed the focus from passive to active engagement in the classroom. There was that more focused time for application and feedback with the students. I was able to test this to show that it's something that works. It proved to accomplish what I wanted it to accomplish. And it helped save time, so I was able to use my class time more effectively. Now, just to give you a context before I get to the practical example here, as I mentioned earlier, I'm teaching in the intensive English program here at Sunway University, and I'm teaching an academic English class. It's called ESLEO. Don't worry about what that means, but it's a reading and writing class to help our students develop those skills they need for university study. The mode of delivery we're currently doing is hybrid. So the students are fully online Monday, Tuesday, and then the rest of the week they're involved with some students are face-to-face in the classroom. Other students join online for the session. The students come from a number of different countries, Malaysia, Japan, China, Vietnam. They're probably upper intermediate level of ESL students. Between the ages of 18 to 22. So in my class, we work on a big research project, and that's what I'm using as the example for this particular workshop. Now, Basically, in this particular example, they're doing research, and part of that is a methodology, which is one segment of their research project. So I'm going to focus a little bit on content input, content application, content mastery, and then evaluating the flipped classroom approach. Now, what I'm doing here, even though I'm using it for research, it can be applied to any teaching situation, any type of lessons, whether you're teaching somebody how to write an essay, to do a book review or book report, giving speeches, doing science projects about the planet, or whatever. This approach can work in any of those scenarios. So as I mentioned earlier, the importance of making sure that it's well planned, making sure there's a clear objective. It's important to think through the 3 stages: the content input, content application, and content mastery. What are the actual activities that you want to incorporate into those segments? And then how much time is it going to take? And then being very clear on what you want to see accomplished, or what you want the students to accomplish. And we're going to look at these in these next couple of slides here. So with the content input, in my situation, the input was to watch a video that explained this particular aspect of the lesson dealing with methodology. And then they needed to actually analyze a sample methodology. And then they were given a set of questions to show their understanding of what that methodology was. And I was able to see from the students' work through the questions that they answered that they understood that particular assignment and was able to analyze the example correctly. In this particular lesson as well, I needed to make sure there was a segment devoted to language. In this case, the student's ability to use passive and active voice. And so I used a YouTube video, something that was already out there available, which captured clearly the active and passive voice. And then I used some self-directed learning for the students, where they were able to use some software that we provided online in our website for them to get some practice using the active and passive voice. Now, obviously, there are other resources out there to focus on language, whether it's live worksheets, whether you give them handouts, or some other activity where they can focus on language if that is a need for your particular lesson. And then there was the moving into the application stage. When they came to class the next day, that next session, I wanted to test their ability and what they learned from the video and so forth. So I did a short quiz using Kahoot. I used this because it was something fun and interactive. I was able to look at their responses, be able to gauge which questions students had problems with, and then be able to, on the spot, address those particular concerns or clarify things that they didn't understand correctly. Now, I use Kahoot. You can use other platforms like Quizlet, or you can give them, if it's face-to-face, you can give them a physical quiz on paper or some other way, but I chose Kahoot. But again, it's just gauging what they understood from the homework video that they watched and the analysis that they did on the actual model methodology. And then I continued with formative assessment activities in the class, where I gave them information for some random research, and then they worked together in pairs to actually write out a methodology of their own. And I had them do it in sections, and I was able to give them instant feedback while they were writing on things that they were on task with, things they needed to clarify, corrections they needed to make. And I was able to see at that point through this activity that they understood. Now, whether or not you use Padlet, or whether or not you're in the classroom and you get big pieces of paper and then the students write it together and then you post it on the wall around the classroom, it doesn't matter. There's so many ways that you can test or do this application segment to see what they've learned, what they understood, and so forth. And then I gave an additional worksheet dealing with language for those who needed to reinforce that particular grammar aspect for this project. And then I continued on with another application activity where they worked together to actually think through the details of their own research. So with the input they had at home, I gave them the input for writing the methodology. In class, they did the activities, the formative assessment, and now I was moving by the end of my lesson to get them to move toward content mastery. And that was accomplished through the homework assignment, where they took their notes now, they took their understanding of the lesson, and then they wrote their methodology at home and submitted it in our learning platform. And then I was able to look at that and see whether or not they understood the assignment, whether they were able to complete it correctly. And I was able to see that they understood the structure, they understood the content, and there were only the issues of grammar that they needed some extra assistance with. So so after the lesson, of course, it's important to evaluate whether or not it was successful. Now I can see from just what the students produced in the end that it was successful, because they all submitted to me a methodology that had the right type of information in it. But I also wanted to get the students' feedback on this particular approach. And the thing I want to highlight is that most of the students, I asked if they preferred this type of lesson in the future, where I gave them videos and information beforehand. And most of them said, yes, they were interested in that, or maybe. So no one said no. So that was a positive, that was some positive feedback from the students, indicating that they saw this as being helpful in their learning experience. So in the end, I had to ask the question, was the lesson successful? Yes, students were able to complete the analysis correctly. They were able to produce a methodology in pairs. They were able to produce their own methodology, showing their understanding of the concept, the structure, content. And the only issue was grammatical mistakes. And they demonstrated the language part, that they understood the passive voice. The student feedback, that it was beneficial to them. And for me, the bonus is it saved one day of class time that I was able to now focus on other important content for the course. Okay. Now, I know that was a mouthful, a lot of information, but now the fun part is we want to learn, or I'd like to learn from what you're doing. And I'm going to put you in groups. And I want to spend some time reflecting on these particular questions. So in your current context, what specific ways do you think that you can incorporate the flipped classroom approach? Whether you're in a government school or in a university program, whether you're teaching economics, whether you're teaching English or whatever, in what way can you incorporate this approach? Then what would be some different tools that you can use to utilize this particular lesson? And then the third question is, what are some of the challenges you may face in incorporating a flipped classroom approach? Okay, so I'm going to put you into breakout groups, and I want you to take about 10 minutes in those groups to begin discussing these questions. Does anyone have any questions? Any questions? Okay, so let me put you into, I'll put the questions in the breakout group as well. So I just gotta close this real quick. Okay, let me find our chat box again. Give me just a moment. My screen has frozen here for just a moment. Okay, there I go. Okay, so put the questions in the chat box, and now I'll put you into your groups here.
Yeah.
So, okay, Lee, Vita, can you see your breakout group invitation? Javita, are you going to join the breakout group? Okay, Lee.
In what specific ways can you incorporate flipped class in your current context? So, so the school that you are teaching right now, is it like a physical school, physical classes?
I'm actually, I have two classes. One is online and the other one is physical.
Ah, okay, okay.
Yes.
So like to me, because there were times during the MCO, right? We have
Jane mentioned just now, yeah, Padlet. There's so many others as well that we can use. I use the Google form, although it's boring. Then, like what Jane said just now, we can get the feedback. I'm not sure about the rest of you.
Nearpod is one of the apps that I use in my class. edX, also another one. Besides the normal Google Classroom. Moodle, also quite interesting. Sorry about being booted out.
Oh, welcome back. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, so maybe we could have a quick thing, since we all have some understanding of what.
So, yeah.
Okay, so Zanti, do you teach secondary school students?
Yeah, secondary schools.
Okay. Right. So I guess I guess at university level, we still want to give students a lot more learner autonomy in that sense.
How about other teachers? Miss Jivita? Oh, okay. So Julina, Abu Jamin, I think same like myself also is a Chinese private school.
I see.
So I think mostly in the Chinese private school, we will have, it's very difficult to, teach students who especially like no interest at all, since they are.
Teacher Jivita is from Utah. It means tertiary level. Is she teaching?
In Brunei, she's using it. I'm not really familiar with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Teams.
Yes, Teams. Okay, Microsoft Teams.
Mm.
Yeah. Do you need to pay for it? Do you need to like subscribe? But it's under school, right?
Yes, this is under the college, correct.
I see, I see, I see.
Yeah.
Is there any challenges that you face during this flip? My challenges is like the students, they didn't follow. They will come to the class unprepared.
It's the same thing. The
Yeah,
same
because
thing.
I'm
Yeah.
teaching the younger secondary school, the lower secondary, right? So they need more
Right.
guidance.
I
Because
see.
some of them, they're just, from the, they have 2 years of MCO. So somehow they're like still like primary school.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why that's the difficult part.
With
Yeah.
yeah, with older students, you would think that they would do their work before class, but
Yes.
unfortunately, no.
Yes.
Most of them are quite passive, still passive actually. So
Yeah.
that's the problem that we face actually, in flipped classes, in all classes basically. Yeah, that's the thing.
Right. So sometimes when they come back, right,
It's not going to work. There has to be some kind of face-to-face, definitely. If not, we lose them.
Yeah, I think it's suitable for independent learners who already have a strong foundation of some sort. But if they are really, really weak, I think they'll just struggle and the input will just go to waste.
Students. Yeah. And Kenny says that no consistency in terms of which students are doing face-to-face. Well, maybe for Santi's case, they're all going back to physical classes.
And a lot of teachers do not want to use any of the tools anymore. It's like, get it away from me. Or, yeah, and they really not. Even the school admin has actually disconnected the Zoom, not Zoom, but we use a different platform where we can conduct online. They've canceled the account, thinking moving forward we will never have.
Is just beyond them. It's scary, it's really scary. And I was so happy that they said no PT3, right? I was really happy because then I could go down to the basics and build them up again rather than worry about exams. Sorry, I think we're going off topic.
Yeah, we are. But it shows that they're not independent learners, and flipped classroom is really difficult
students with uniform, so it's a bit different, right? Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah. Thank you. So okay, well, after that you are like not really feeling well, right?
Yeah, I have been having cough and flu for the past few days. Luckily, it's not COVID, but
okay,
gosh,
yeah, it's
sorry
the
about
season
that.
right now. No problem, no problem.
And whatever. Of course, we have a handful of students who actually do not participate, but with a push or some encouragement or sometimes some kind of threaten, we do get them to to participate in our activities. Okay, so in our case, because we conduct action research for the EAP classes, so we do have a lot of activities that is actually engaging them through the classroom. So probably like, getting them to have forum discussions online among their group members, and then also sharing with them some videos before the lessons, so that we can have a discussion during our lessons. And when it comes to speaking as well, we also provide some, videos for them to watch first, and maybe have a role play activity in class. So I guess in our case, flipped classroom is actually very, very helpful, especially during these 2 years. Although we have problems where students give excuses that they do not have proper Wi-Fi connection, and sometimes they in and out, they leave the classroom, and sometimes it's quite annoying. But somehow or other, we do get them engaged. And sometimes if these problems occur quite frequently, what we do is we ask them to come back maybe during their free time and then complete their work. So this is what happens in our school. Maybe Lawa wants to share something here.
Yeah. Miss Yvonne is teaching senior classes, whereas I'm teaching junior. So actually we have the same problem, but when it comes to when it comes to this flipped classroom, most of my students, they enjoy it, even though some of them, they don't understand. But if we give them the right motivation, if we talk to them, okay, this is how you do, we guide them step by step, yes, they will follow. Yes, indeed, I am having quite a few students, a handful actually, who cannot read basic English. So what I do is I give them to watch YouTube. It's an exercise for them to watch on weekends. Just watch these simple cartoons, with the subtitles, in order for them to brush up their English. This is the way that they are like, it's an encouraging method for them, because they come and tell me, teacher, we don't know how to speak. They will come and speak in broken English. So this is what I do in my case lah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Let me just get my screen to cooperate here. Now, I've joined in listening to some of the discussions going on in the different groups, and I've heard some very positive things about what some teachers are doing in their context. But what I want to do is just spend a few minutes talking about the challenges, question number 3. So if you can just briefly put in the chat box, what were some of the challenges that you experienced or you feel you experience in using the flipped classroom model? So if you can just take a moment to put a few ideas there, and maybe we can talk together about some of those things. Okay, the first comment there by Julina, students not wanting to do the assigned work. Okay, yes, there's always that risk when you do a flipped classroom situation that students may not do the work or coming in unprepared, as mentioned. And one of the videos I was watching when I was looking at some of the information, the teacher was sharing how he is doing his class is a high school group of students. And he said initially he experienced that same thing. He'd have students come in unprepared and or they didn't do the assigned work at home. And so they were lost when they came to class. And he decided, well, I can just scrap the whole idea and go back to normal. But he decided, well, I'm going to be a little bit more persistent. I'm going to try to help the students learn why we're doing it this way and what the benefit is. And then what happens if they come to class and they're not prepared. And he said that that began to work. And after a couple of sessions of doing the flipped classroom approach, they began to buy into it. They began to see, oh, it is helpful. It is good to have this class time to apply more of the knowledge and understanding. And there was a shift in, he said, in his class. He said those students who weren't prepared in the past, they were always prepared when he did a flipped class session. So he said they did come around to do it eventually. So it depends on the level. It depends on the maturity of the students, obviously. But don't give up after the first time. Don't say, oh, it didn't work, and it's never going to work, because then it probably won't. Okay, so students can be blur sometimes. What do you mean by blur? Sorry, I'm not familiar with the use of that expression, blur. Maybe the accident in creating YouTube videos in themselves, but they get flustered and confused. Okay, so assisting the weak learner, that's a very good question. And obviously, this is where you test what they know when they come into class. When you work on those application tasks, you'll be able to identify those students who are weaker. So while your other students are actively engaged in some of the application activities, you can connect with those students individually and guide them through at a slower pace and help build that understanding. And that may be something you can try to deal with the weaker learners. How do we, a mixed group. What do you mean by mixed group?
I think Mingna is a great idea. Maybe she can share with us.
No, go ahead.
Well, sorry. Yeah, because I said we can group them in different categories. Like, for example, weaker students and so-so students, and also with the excellent students, smart students, group them together so that they can help each other. I do think this is a good idea to help them so that they can help each other as well.
Excellent idea. Excellent. Yeah. Yes, for sure. Yes, take advantage of those stronger students, and they will definitely step up and help those who are weaker. Yes.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Okay, so we have about 2 minutes left. Our time is drawing to a close here. Does anybody have any questions that they are dying to ask? I do have a couple of links here for further reading. But
the question is, what if it is a big class? Like, for example, just now I heard from my group, I forgot which teacher. She said that she has this 60 students in a big class. As for me, myself, I have 53 students in my class. So it's quite hard to do flipping classroom, is it?
That would be a challenge, having a class that large. Again, that may be where some of the formative assessments in class are more in a group, and then you're going around gauging what's happening in those groups with those particular assignments and monitoring that way. And, and that may be a way of managing that.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much for your participation. And I'm going to just give you information. Remember to follow your link for session 2. So again, thank you for joining. Time went by very quickly, so much to cover. I hope through the discussion you were able to share and learn from each other's experience and walk away having learned something new that will be helpful for you as you continue to teach in the future. Okay, so thanks again and enjoy the rest of the symposium.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Wei Hong, did I forget to share screen for the last couple of slides?
I think you did. I think you can stop recording now.
Oh, thank you.